Welcome back. I'm Ian Masters, and this is Background Briefing, available 24/7 at backgroundbriefing.org. And joining us now is Lance Dodes, who's a training and supervising analyst emeritus with the Boston Psychiatric Society and Institute, who was a clinical professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Dodas is a contributor, along with 36 other psychiatrists and mental health experts who have contributed to a book assessing President Trump, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. 37 psychiatrists and mental health experts assess a president, updated and expanded in new essays. Welcome to Background Briefing, Lance Dodes.
Thank you, Ian. Good to be with you.
Well, thanks for joining us, Lance. And we've spoken in the past about Trump's mental health and his behavior. And I can't tell you how many times I've tried to make the point that if you could ever get a camera inside the Oval Office during his tenure and to see how he actually behaves, the American people would be appalled. The scales would come off the eyes of the MAGA people as well. And a little bit of that happened today with the testimony from the former chief aide to the chief of staff, Mark Meadows. So what kind of impact do you think it's going to have?
Well, I think the people that already were aware of how troubled, very, very troubled Trump is, and the people who are aware that his actions were traitorous will be unchanged, because there's nothing new there in that sense. I think independents may be swayed. I hope that they are. But the people that are in essentially a cult-like following of Donald Trump will ignore it the way Trump does. They will do what Trump does, which is to say, if you disagree with me or offend me, then you are both wrong and evil, and it's fake news if you're accusing me of something. And I don't think they're ever going to change. So there's always been a core of people who are unchangeable, just as there was a core of people in Germany who followed Hitler, and a core of people in Russia who followed Stalin, and so forth. But we don't have to have 100% agreement. So I hope it'll do something good.
Well, Cassidy Hutchinson, the former aide to Donald Trump's final chief of staff, Mark Meadows, she's already being attacked, of course, by Trump on his social media platform. Sure. But much of what she said was, so shocking. It's just unbelievable what a criminal this man is, and what his criminal instincts are, and how he has no concept of justice or law or decency or humanity. I mean, he's clearly such a sociopath. When he was told by the Secret Service at the rally on the Ellipse that there were armed people out there, he wanted them to come in and make the crowd look bigger. And he said, I don't effing care if they have weapons. They are not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags, the magatometers, away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away. The first thing that she talked about was how on January the 2nd, when she was walking Giuliani to his car at the White House, on the White House grounds, Giuliani said it's going to be incredible, on January the 6th. It's just going to be wild. A great day is what he said, apparently. So then you've got this other extraordinary scene that she talked about where Trump wanted to go to, he promised the marchers that he would go to the Capitol with them. And as he was leaving the Ellipse after he gave his speech there and rallied the crowd to fight like hell and march on the Capitol, he got into the limo and it started to go to the White House instead of to take him up towards the Capitol. And he had a hissy fit and tried to grab the steering wheel of the big limo they call the Beast. And then when his top Secret Service aide, who was in the Beast with him, tried to reason with him, Trump tried to strangle his head of his Secret Service security detail. So this is pretty unusual behavior for anybody, let alone a president of the United States, surely.
Well, let me go back to when you said it was shocking, because I think that's the key here. People who don't understand that Donald Trump is not like other human beings. He's very different. He's just you could almost say he's not a human being. Of course, he is biologically, but he is so different from the norm. He is so sick. He has a psychotic core. He's a sociopath. All of that we've been saying for years is all true. So if you start out with that, if I were to say, look, this man is no different from a predatory animal, not a human, and of course he will attack and do whatever he thinks is in his own personal interest, and it just doesn't matter who else is hurt or maimed or injured or killed or whatever. It doesn't matter. So if you start out with that, which is where I'm at and where I hope many people are at, it's not shocking. I'm not, it's good to hear about this, to get it out, but it doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I mean, we already knew that he wanted to kill Pence. He would have been happy to have Pence killed, He would kill anybody. He is the same psychology as any serial murderer. He happens not to murder people himself with his bare hands, although he sounds like he came close, or at least he tried to come close this time. But that's who he is. So, I'm glad this is all coming out. Your point is I think, right. People maybe will finally see the daylight and they'll stop drinking the Kool-Aid. We hope. But it's a question of understanding that this person is basically not human in the sense of humanity as an entity who cares about, who is able to understand other people, who can have some empathy, and who is not sadistic. But that's who Trump is.
And again, I'm speaking with Lance Dodes, a training and supervising analyst emeritus with the Boston Psychoanalytic Society and Institute, who was a clinical professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. And Dr. Dodas is a contributor, along with 36 other psychiatrists and mental health experts who have contributed to a book assessing President Trump, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. 37 psychiatrists and mental health experts assess the president, updated and expanded with new essays. But Lance, I have a bit of a problem in the sense that if you say that Donald Trump is mentally ill, then automatically you should feel sympathy towards him, because mentally ill people, need our sympathy. They can't be ostracized and they need treatment.
Sure.
So isn't he just a really bad human being? Walk us through that distinction.
Yes, I think you've said it exactly right. So when we think of people who have mental illness, first of all, everybody has some troubles, right? So I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about what we would call neurotic difficulties, problems of dealing with life, relationships, all of that. I'm not talking about that, and neither, I think, are you. So that's one thing. But the people who really deserve the title mentally ill and who deserve our help, you're absolutely right, are people who have one of the few number of major mental illnesses like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. It used to be called manic depressive illness. So those people have a biological disorder, and it's sort of not their fault if they hear, voices, or they have delusions, or they're manic, or they get severely depressed. Not their fault is the issue, but you know what I'm saying. These people, of course, deserve our treatment. But there's another class of kinds of problems. If you leave aside the kind of neurotic difficulties, and you put on one side, and you leave aside the biologically psychotic illnesses like bipolar disorder and schizophrenia, in the middle, there are people who have what are called character disorders. That's different. And that's where the dividing line occurs. So a lot of people do have character disorders. The difference between that and let's say a particular set of symptoms, whether it's compulsive behavior, addictive behavior, phobias, the difference is that people with characterological disorders, it's their entire character. That's why we call them that. You could call it a personality disorder. It's something about the whole way that they live in the world. Most of the folks like that are not at all harmful to other people. They may be a handful in terms of their relatedness, but you wouldn't say that they're bad. They are just across the board troubled in the way they relate to the world and the way they understand the world. and they often are hard to reason with, you might say. But the distinction is sometimes people have this psychopathy or sociopathies where the fundamental character disorder is so severe that it sets them apart from all other character disorders. And what sets them apart is this complete absence of a normal function. They don't have a conscience. It doesn't matter to them what happens to other people. They are lacking something that is normal. And that's not true of people with other character disorders. You know, you can be paranoid even without loss of a conscience. But there are few people who really do fit into the category of being evil. You know, and the word is not in the psychological nomenclature, but it's apt. So there are certain people who are so different from the rest of humanity that we have to treat them and think of them differently, like a serial killer. So that's who Trump is. He is untreatable. And you know, you can have as much sympathy for the fact that he was obviously raised by awful parents. But at this point, he has left the realm of normal human behavior and normal humanity. So if he weren't president, obviously he would have been arrested long ago for inciting this riot and for being treasonous. But then you would put him in jail because there's no point in doing anything else, but you have to protect the public.
Well, just in the last few minutes then, Lance, Cassidy Hutchinson described going into the president's private dining room off the Oval Office, where he spent a lot of time watching TV, and he apparently had seen the reports of what Bill Barr had said to the Associated Press, basically saying there's nothing wrong with the elections, that they couldn't find any fault with them, and that Biden clearly won. And apparently he had a total tantrum, threw his lunch plates at the walls, and there was ketchup splattered all over the place. And she went on to say that it was fairly routine that he would have tantrums and rip the tablecloth off the table and have all of the White House crockery shattered around the floor and around the table. So this is a description of like a 2-year-old, isn't it, having tantrums?
Well, yes and no. 2-year-olds are much healthier than Donald Trump. I mean, it's a normal developmental phase because they haven't had a chance to learn and their brain is not developed. So it's unfair to 2-year-olds to compare them to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, this is the other confusion that's been going on for years. He has a psychotic core. It's not the same as, you know, hearing voices or thinking that the people on Mars are talking to you. It's not that kind of thing. That's more associated with the biological disorder, schizophrenia. But the fact that he falls apart, that he has what you're calling a tantrum, is that you get a breakthrough of this thick veneer of normality, this thick veneer that the good sociopath, the successful sociopaths have to act like they're normal and they're actually caring about somebody when they don't care about anybody, right? So it breaks through, and then you see this violent, completely unhinged, unrealistic, out of control, self-centered psychosis. And then it heals over. He doesn't really heal. I'm sorry, that's the wrong word. It covers over again, and he's back to being the smiling, allegedly reasonable person. But at those moments, you see what is really there in him, and that's what's always there. And that's why it shouldn't be shocking to see that being manifested in all of his other behaviors.
But what is shocking, Lance, is that all of those White House aides and cabinet members saw this all along from day one. And that includes the generals who quit. And the worst person of all, it seems, is Mark Meadows, who comes across as being absolutely supine, despicable, cowardly, wouldn't stop Trump. You know, Trump apparently didn't want to listen to anybody. He just wanted more violence. And he was perfectly happy to see Mike Pence hanged. And all of the other White House aides that had some conscience, like the White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, were begging Meadows to intervene with Trump, and he refused. It's absolutely, it's not just Trump, there's a sort of sickness in the land, a sickness amongst, even more so amongst his supporters who know who he is and how he behaves. You maybe can excuse all the people out there in MAGA land because they watch Fox News and have no idea about who this guy really is. But the people around him, some of them are just disgraceful.
Oh, absolutely. Many of them, I think, are disgraceful. Many of them. And Fox News is disgraceful. You know, the media contributed to this for years. Not you. You were a bright exception. But, you know, think of all those press conferences when he used to have press conferences and he would yell at respected reporters telling them that they were fake news working for a fake agency. I mean, at that point, all of the media should have stood up and said there is something desperately inadequate about this man, desperately cruel, sadistic, evil, out of touch with reality, however you wanted to put it, and we will not put up with it. It should have been a headline every day, really, that we have a man who has no respect for democracy. He's literally anti-democracy because he wants to be a tyrant. That should have been the headline every day that he was president. But, you know, people put up with it because I think of the same kind of thing we were saying before. We kind of expect, we're not prepared to see a monster as the president. You know, we're supposed to respect the president, you know. And most of them, whether they're good or bad, have been deserving of at least some respect. But not him. And we just were caught off guard. So, you know, it's sort of like Germany when Hitler came to power. People thought Hitler was a joke, you know, until he took power. Well, you know, I think the country will either grow up from this and recognize that there's evil in the land, or, you know, democracy will be over.
Well, Lance Dodes, I thank you very much for joining us here today.
Certainly, it's my pleasure.
And again, I've been speaking with Lance Dodes, who's a training and supervising analyst emeritus with the Boston Psychoanalytic Society and Institute, who was as clinical professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. Dr. Dodas is a contributor along with 36 other psychiatrists and mental health experts who have contributed to the book assessing President Trump, The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. 37 psychiatrists and mental health experts assess the president, updated and expanded with new essays. We're going to take a brief station break and be back with an update on the G7 summit that has just ended and the NATO summit in Madrid, which is just